Hello, everyone. Welcome to this installment of Poetry Hour Notes from the Field. My name is Marcelo Hernandez Castillo, and I am your YubaSutter County Poet Laureate here on this wonderful Wednesday, um, February 8th, I believe. Yes. Uh, Thank you again for streaming in to these monthly series of talks on what's happening in the world of poetry. And again, my continued insistence that poetry isn't dead and that there is an active, burgeoning renaissance happening all around us. So, last time I talked in January, I talked about one of my own poems. And I guess today I wanted to show you kind of maybe something that I'm excited about that's been published recently, that's hot off the presses, and hopefully you might check them out. So, name dropping. I am in the middle of this book here, Judas Goat by Gabrielle Bates, and it's published by Tin House Books, and it just the publication date was just a couple days ago, I believe, or last week. And Gabriel, Gabriel, sorry, has been really has been a really great poet for a long time, and there were a lot of people really anticipating her first debut book. So this is a first book, and it's making a lot of buzz in the literary circles. So I thought I would start off today's talk with just the first poem to kind of give you a sense of the book to come, and would encourage anyone to go check it out. And the first poem is titled The Dog by Gabrielle Bates. The dog. He didn't. Oh, and that's my dog thinking that I'm talking about another dog. Sorry. He didn't want to tell me. He almost didn't. It was luck, much more than gut, that made me ask. A beer opened an hour earlier than usual. The desire for a conversation. There was no sense of me in me that he was in some sort of aftermath. He said, when I asked, I had a bad day, or I had a weird day. I can't remember. I saw a dog, he said. I was on the train. A man with a dog on a leash. The man ran and made it, but the dog hesitated outside. And the doors closed. No, not on his neck, on the leash, trapping it. The man was inside and the dog was outside on the platform. The button beside the door ringed in light, blinked. The man was shouting now, hitting the button. All else silent. The befuddlement of the dog pulled along, the pace slow until it wasn't. The tunnel the train must pass through leaving the station is a perfectly calibrated, unforgiving fit. The dog had a color and a size I don't know, so it comes to me as legion. Large, small, fur long or short, white or gray. But the man always looks the same. As I held him against me in our kitchen, the moment sharpened my eyes. How easily I could imagine a version of our lives in which he kept all his suffering secret from me. I saw the beer on the counter. I saw myself drink it. When we went to bed, I stared at the back of his head, split between compassion and fury. My nails gently scratching up his arm, up and down, up and down. The blade without which the guillotine is nothing. So, what a way to open a book. Yeah, Gabrielle's work has appeared in The New Yorker, Poetry Magazine, American Poetry Review, so many others. She's a writer, visual artist, and co host of the Poet Salon podcast. Is originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and now lives in Seattle, Washington. I had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of years ago in Seattle. So I'm excited to get her to sign this book the next time that I see her. And so today, in the 15 or so minutes that I have, I wanted to talk about another book that I was really excited about, that I ended up teaching last year as soon as it dropped, because I knew also that I was anticipating this book for a long time after her first book. This is the book Customs by Solmaz Sharif, who just started a job as a professor at UC Berkeley. So I'm excited that she is now in the area. Maybe it would be a dream if I could have her on. So, or even invite her to the area. Getting my coffee. And so, Customs is Solmaz's second book. I'm sorry. After her first book, Look, it's titled Look, which was wildly successful, not wildly, but just an incredible book that I come back to again and again. And I know a lot of people were really anticipating her second book, Customs. And I'm going to read just one poem from it, but then veer over to an introduction to an essay that she had that I thought was very revelatory. This is a poem titled Now What? And so I sat at a tall table in an Ohio hotel, eating delivery. Cheese bread with garlic butter. Only it was not butter, but partially hydrogenated soybean oil and regular soybean oil, and it came in a little tub like creamer that's also not dairy. America in this century means a poem will have to contain dairy that is, in fact, not dairy. On Instagram, a man has bought a 10-foot by 4-foot photo of a bridge he lives beside. Bridge he can see just outside his window which serves as a 10-foot by 4-foot frame. My materialist mind, I can't shake it. With a perfect little tub of garlic butter, a relief of workers of sickles, fields of soy. We were tanners pushed to the edge of the city once, by the stench, the bubble of vats of flesh and loosening skin. Back when the city pulled, leather bucket by leather bucket, its own water from wells. Then we worked the cafeterias at the petroleum offices of the British. Then revolution. Simple. So Solmaz's poems are anything but simple, and yet the language is accessible. I guess the one thing that I wanted to talk about today briefly is just this idea that I've been thinking about is the poem of the poet's observation, or is the poem of the poet's doing? Or in other words, does the meaning of the poem reside in the poet's observation or in what the poet does with language? Or is it of the poet's making, is what I meant to say. And so I'm going to share my screen to briefly share this poem here, which is a beginning to a essay titled The Near Transitive Properties of the Political and Poetical Erasure. it begins with this idea: every poem is an action, every action is political, every poem is political. And she opens with this anecdote. A lover once, and this is what the person said: you can't say every action is political, then the word political loses all meaning. He added, what is political about this moment? I was washing his dishes. I had left the water running. So again, Samaz does so much with so little. And I am continually just awestruck by what she is able to accomplish in such a simple moment as this, in which you have two people in a kitchen. One asks, what is political about this moment? And the author, assuming Samaz, says, I was washing his dishes. I had left the water running. And then in this moment, you have the meaning residing in a poet's observation of what is happening in the moment, rather than flourishes and decorative language, rather than figurative language that poets are known for. And yes, Solmaz does this, but a kind of observation of a moment that provides for us an insight into the nuances of life, into the nuances of how much more complicated things are if we just look a little bit closer to even the smallest things around us, like the act of washing dishes. And in this moment, the line is, I was washing his dishes. I had left the water running. And being in California, we know just how precarious and volatile all of our conversations around water use are, around Southern California and the drought, the decade-long drought that we are living through as a result of climate change. And also this lover, also the idea that you as the shared labor, the weight of labor between a relationship, that you were washing this person's dishes, that you had left the water running, and that in itself is a political act. So this poem that I read, the first poem that I read by Solmaz, Now What? She is meditating on this moment of sitting in a hotel in Ohio and eating cheese bread with garlic butter. And that's it. And from that, she is able to meditate on how small of a detail it is that there is this small tub of butter that is not butter, and how simple yet how complicated things can be, how contained they can be, that her family were pushed to the edge of a city by the industry of tanning leather, and then her family working at the cafeterias, at the petroleum offices of the British. Then revolution. Simple. As if anything can be that simple, right? So I've talked again and again, I guess, about some of my students say, and this is more for creative, this is kind of a conversation that happens in creative nonfiction a lot, is, well, what if I don't have an interesting story to tell? What if I don't have something compelling or spectacular, or, that my life didn't have something almost like cinematic, as if in order for a story to have meaning, it has to have some cinematic value to it. And that's incredibly far from the truth, because as we know, any successful artist, any artist, who is a careful observer, any artist who I think is a true artist, is an artist who can take a mundane act and put a life or death stake on it. That they can take a small act like washing the dishes and elevate it to the level of life or death. And in reality, it is life or death. Not just in our relationship with others and the effect that that has on us, but something as simple as our own individual use of water, our own implication in the larger discussion around climate change. And so for those of you listening who think, I'm a writer, but I don't know what to write about. I'm a writer, but I don't know if I have a story to tell. I think that just means that you're not looking hard enough, or that you're not necessarily thinking just how deep, complicated our lives are. And so I think what is the phrase? An artist worth their salt can see, even can't see the entire universe in sitting in front of their desk. That you don't have to have a spectacular kind of story in order for it to be a good story. Yes, it is. It's important to have something to tell, but that something doesn't have to align with the cinematic value that we kind of ascribe to stories. It might be a symptom of our time, but it's what we make of it. It's what we make of our small daily lives. I mentioned in a previous column for the Appeal Democrat about how living in this area, I went to Italy last year, and how living in this area and the valley, the fields, prepared me for understanding the art that I encountered and the landscape that I encountered in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country that I visit. Where I am at home informs how I navigate the world around me. And so every act is political, and every act has an implication, I think, on our larger lives. Again, something as small as washing dishes for somebody else and leaving the water running. It's always a good reminder that there is meaning all around us. So next time you think, I don't know what to write, look at the smallest instance and see that in reality, the universe can exist in that small instance. So again, keeping these sweet and short, or short and sweet. And thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a good rest of your month. I will see you next month with a special guest that I have lined up. So please take a look at that. And please take a look at all of the programming for YubaSutterArts&Culture. They have a lot going on going into this new year. So thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next month.